Real Truth Real Quick only lives up to half of its name. It's quick, but there's no truth involved at all. It's produced by the Watermark Community Church in Dallas, Texas. It's so full of misinterpretations and mistakes that I had trouble keeping up with them. Every time I paused to scribble some notes and then restart, another bushel of babbling bullshit came at me so fast I hardly had time to react. Let's take a look at it and abandon hope, all ye who enter here.
Welcome to Real Truth Real Quick. My name is Rick Smith. I'm here with my friend Todd Wagner.
Hey, what's up, Rick?
All right. Well, I got another good question for you today, and you got 5 minutes, so here we go. What is the biblical view on dinosaurs?
Well,
Are they in the Bible?
There is no biblical view on dinosaurs, and there are no dinosaurs mentioned in the Bible. There have been various attempts to shoehorn them in using words like behemoth and leviathan, but there are only minor references to those two things in the Bible anyway. The description of behemoth could apply to almost any large animal. It could apply to things that were known at the time, but maybe not seen by those scribbling it down. Things like elephants, rhinoceros, hippo. But it could also be stories embellished by a traveler who just wanted to make up a fantastic beast. I should know, I'm an angler.
yeah, listen, let's go back. This is really interesting because dinosaurs, what are they? We didn't even know they were around until 1841 when I think Sir Alfred Owen.
No, it was Sir Richard Owen. He was one of the preeminent naturalists of his day. He's remembered principally for his disagreements with Charles Darwin, but he did a lot of valuable work. And his critique of Darwin actually anticipated many of the later legitimate objections to Darwin's ideas. To get his name wrong, to not bother getting it correct, is inexcusable.
Coined the name Dinosaurus from the Greek, which means terrible lizard. That's all it is. It's just a big lizard. That's what a dinosaur is.
No, they are not big lizards. They aren't even related, except that they're both reptiles. The order Squamata, in which lizards belong, broke off in the, let me check my notes here. Diverged from the Archosauromorpha approximately 281 million years ago in the Permian. Now that's before dinosaurs even evolved from the Archosauromorpha. So dinosaurs and lizards are reptiles, but that's it. The non-avian dinosaurs died out about 66 million years ago. The first true lizards, the Lacertids, didn't arise until about 10 million years later.
And my Bible says that God created all animals on the fifth day. And so there we go. I think the Bible does talk about the fact that there were creatures that existed.
Okay, I'm beginning to see your problem. You're using the Bible as a science text. It isn't. It was scribbled down on papyrus long before we knew about things like geology, geophysics, genetics, cosmology, all the things that show it to be just a collection of stories and fables. You'll find more and better science in the printing techniques and bookbinding techniques used in producing a Bible than you ever will in the words themselves.
Most dinosaurs, most of these things were not that big. The ones that were big are the ones that get all the attention. What a lot of people don't know, Rick, is that we don't find very much of the remains of these animals. In fact, I would say, I remember reading that.
Well, there's an impeccable source. Do you have any citations?
As much as maybe 20% was the most we ever found of one of these skeletal structures.
No, the most complete dinosaur fossil so far is Field Museum Natural History specimen PR2081, a Tyrannosaurus rex named Sue after its discoverer, Sue Hendrickson, who dug it out of the ground in 1990. It's about 90% complete.
You find a leg bone, you find a few fragments of hip bone, and then some vertebrae, and we all of a sudden construct this massive animal, and we put big sharp teeth in it.
No, they're not going to stick big sharp teeth into it and just assume that they belong to the skull they find. They may do, and they may try that, but they're not just going to assume the teeth belong to the skull. They may belong to another species, perhaps a prey species or a predator species. And if you're a paleontologist, wouldn't you rather find 2 fossils than 1? Bonus!
All of a sudden, because of big sharp teeth, we think they were carnivores.
Yes, it's pretty safe to assume that if it's got large, sharp teeth, it's a carnivore. Now, later discoveries could overturn that. It could be a species like the panda, for instance, which has evolved from a meat-eating ancestor to one that's principally vegetarian. But that word evolve is probably getting in the way of their little story.
Which, if you go back and read Genesis 1, in fact, we did a Real Truth Real Quick on are we all supposed to be vegetarians based on Genesis chapter 1. And we talk about dinosaurs briefly there. And I don't think those dinosaurs were carnivores.
Hate to break this to you, but you're absolutely and undeniably wrong.
Okay? Now, that gets to the question, what happened to dinosaurs? And by the way, were dinosaurs on the ark?
I think so. I think they were 2 every animal.
Yeah.
That would certainly seem to be every part of every animal.
If they existed and God told every animal to be there, you would say yes.
Otherwise, we've got some serious other problems.
Yeah. And so
Damn right you'd have some serious other problems. I mean, the natural history and logistical gymnastics needed to justify that could be a feature-length film, probably scripted by Stephen King.
hey, listen, I'm not a genius, but if I was
That's obvious. You're not a genius. But I'm not going to make flippant comments about that because I'm not a genius either. I've got a grade 12 high school diploma with a grade 13 biology credit. That's the extent of my formal education. Everything else is self-learned and self-taught. But it seems that I had either better teachers than you or I was a better student.
told, to put certain kind of animals on the ark, whether it be an elephant, okay, or a dinosaur, I wouldn't put a fully mature adult on there, okay? And if God brought the animals to the ark, I'm not sure he sent the largest, what we would know today as African elephant in the world. And I would bring a small elephant.
Then your God is an idiot or he's going senile. He obviously doesn't remember that the African elephants that he allegedly created live in tight matriarchal societies with the senior mothers teaching the young about how to behave within the pack, how to find food, migration routes to food sources, how to stay out of danger, and so forth, without a pair of dominant matriarchal females, or a bunch of them, in order to enforce order and teach these things. A couple of young elephants are not going to survive.
Not a genius.
I'd bring a baby.
Okay? I'd bring a baby dinosaur.
No, because if you were a genius, you might think to take dinosaur eggs instead, leaving out the problems of how long are you going to incubate them and at what temperatures so that they don't all turn out the same sex and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, we're not going to get into that because I don't think you know anything about it. What about the placental mammals? Let me check my notes again. Let's see, we had Indricotheres, which were huge, the largest land animal ever. The young, a newborn young, weighed about 227 kilograms, or about 500 pounds. They ate lots of food. They would produce lots of shit. The giant ground sloths of South America. Again, huge animals needing lots of food. There are over 60 different species of them. So you're going to have to take all those aboard the ark. Unless you want to agree with speciation. I don't think you want to do that. You're just pulling stuff out of your butt to justify your fables. And that's all it is, a fable. No evidence whatsoever.
So what's really interesting, I'll tell you though, where they go. Okay, well, after the flood, a lot changed about the earth, including as the water began to recede. Initially, there wasn't much land. Okay, I think you could say, I don't know what percentage. At first, it was just mountain peaks that were around. So a lot of the world was covered still in water. Limited food supply, destruction of a lot of habitat.
Okay, so how long are we going to have before the vegetation reaches a sufficient state to allow the herbivores out of the ark? You're going to need a lot of food for herbivores, and some of it is highly specialized. The bamboo is going to be required for pandas. Eucalyptus is going to be required for koalas. Did it even survive the flood? Some people who interpret the Bible say that the flood may have lasted for up to a year. Are you sure that all those land plants survived being inundated for that long? I don't think so. And then once you've got a huge load of food for them to eat, all the while you're going to have to be feeding them. Once you let them out, it's going to take a long time before they produce enough other of their kind to be a sufficient number for the predators that you've still got on board the ark and still feeding. Because if you release them all at the same time, 2 cheetahs take down 2 gazelles, and then their food source is gone. Come on, grow up. You're going to have to hope that all the plants survive the flood. You're going to have to hope that they grow in enough profusion afterwards that you can let the herbivores out. And then you're going to have to hope that you've got enough food for the carnivores to allow for the herbivores to build up a sufficient prey. This just doesn't work. There's more plot holes than in Plan 9 from outer space.
And then also in Genesis 9:3, we see that God says, now you can start to eat meat.
Now they can start to eat meat. Wow! Glad they got those big sharp teeth, huh?
And so I imagine that if you're looking for a food supply, you kill the largest food supply that you can kill. And who knows if you wouldn't kill some for fun. Okay,
Yep.
right? I'd shoot the biggest one. Let's just say a lot of dinosaurs did survive and didn't get extinct because of a lack of food supply or loss of habitat. But it does make sense that the largest animals that need the most food would die first. It also makes sense that if they're going to be hunters, they're going to kill the biggest animals first.
Yeah.
No, they will not go after the biggest one. Most predation is opportunistic. Predators fail far more times than they succeed. Going after the biggest one could entail problems like injuries or needing a bunch of the others in the pack to try to bring it down. What they will usually try to do is separate one from the herd and hope that it's weak, sick, stupid, whatever, and then try to kill it. And they will usually fail. Your lack of reasoning is shown when you said, if you had a gun, last I recall, T-Rex didn't have guns. I doubt they used a pistol. I don't think those scrawny little hands could use it properly. And their eyesight might not have been great. Maybe they couldn't even hit the broad side of a Triceratops.
Okay, so what really is interesting, there was a recent discovery, I think 2004, 2005, in Patagonia, Argentina. I love the name of this dinosaur. And what's so unique about this dinosaur, it's called Dreadnoughtus, which means fear not. Why do they call it that? Well, first of all, it was an amazing discovery because they found over 70% of this animal from the head down.
But I thought you said earlier that 20% was the most they'd ever found. Didn't you say 20%? I'm sure you said 20. Did anybody hear? I'm sure he said 20%. Help me out.
Which, again, if I told you, most dinosaur remains, I think that to that point, the largest they had found, maybe of a T-Rex, was like 20-some-odd%. And they built the rest of it. T-Rexes were 13 feet tall, roughly 40 feet long, maybe. Dreadnoughtus was like 65 tons. Okay, that's heavier than a 737. And they could really estimate the weight well because of the full skeletal structure that they found.
And how were they able to do that? I presume it was by scientific means rather than divine revelation.
About 70% of this animal. That weighs more than 12 African elephants, more than 7 T-Rexes. This thing was 2 stories high, 80 feet long. They say its tail alone was longer than a city bus. All this is amazing, and it's pretty interesting. What's even more amazing is what paleontologists say was the cause of the death of this Dreadnoughtus. They say it was, number one, it was a herbivore. It wasn't a carnivore.
Wow, who would have thought there would be herbivorous dinosaurs?
Number 2, it died as massive as it was, because of a raging torrent or flood.
Really? You mean that its huge size and weight didn't prevent it from drowning in a flood? And there's only been one flood in all of recorded history?
And they found it in like quicksand or a sandy area, and it was largely preserved. That's what they found. That fits with the biblical record.
It only fits with the biblical record if you could demonstrate that it died a few thousand years ago and that there's only been one flood in history. You might want to talk to people in New Orleans about that. Hurricane Katrina had them rolling up their pant legs and hopping into canoes in 2005.
So when you think dinosaurs, you can think Bible. You don't have to think millions of years. Okay? You just have to go. They're there. God created them. We don't need to fear them. I think maybe you'll see them in heaven, and because of all creation will be restored. But they won't eat you.
Yeah,
Cool story, bro.
they won't eat you. You know, it's funny. One of the you made the comment about we've only found 20%. I remember at one point I didn't know that, and we were at a museum. I think it was in New York, and I told my wife, "Man, how do they find this huge dinosaur in the sand?" She's like, "Rick, you know, there's only like 4 of those bones are from that dinosaur, and they made all the rest." I'm like, "No way!" So I'm googling it on my phone, and you're right. You go to the museum.
Yeah.
That's not what they found in the sand.
They find a skull and build a whole civilization. They clay out the face, and they
Built a what? As far as I know, there was no dinosaur civilization. But if a few bones are found that match those from a well-known species, it's quite easy to construct the rest for display purposes. In fact, many reconstructions will actually show which are the actual fossil bones taken out of the ground and which one are the reproduced ones.
listen. Believe in dinosaurs. That doesn't mean you have to believe in millions of years.
I don't believe in dinosaurs. I accept the scientific evidence that they existed and lived millions of years ago. You are free to believe whatever wrong thing you wish.
Okay? I am a young earth guy. That's another real truth, real quick. I'm not saying it's just a few thousand, but I think it's closer to a few thousand than it is millions of years. Dinosaurs and evolution don't go together. Dinosaurs and the biblical record do.
All right.
Yes, they do. And no, they don't. You haven't produced one tiny bit of evidence to back up your claim about a creation or a biblical flood. Nothing. That makes you a failure at both science and creationism.